Alrighty, so let's talk about tax laws and why do you want to get proportional as soon as possible. So before we move on to some Excel chart simulations, we first need to make some assumptions for our typical early game economy. So we're first going to assume that 70% of our value added are going to be turned into wages for all of our buildings. That will include subsistence buildings. This will actually shift the argument in favor of uh, per capita and land taxes, since it will decrease the wage for subsistence. So it will, like, it's, yes, it's not exactly the case, but let's just make this assumption, and the math is going to be a lot easier as well, honestly. And also, we're going to assume that our common early game industry will provide us with an average of 1,500 value added, and that's pretty much the case even at 20% throughput. Like, most of the industries in the early game will not have really high value added. And yes, furnitures can get like 2,000 or something if I recall correctly. However, it's dragged down by the amount of forestries and the tools workshops you have to build for it, which those stuff sits at around like 1,000 value added per industry. So yeah, these assumptions will hold up to what we see in game. And now let us take a look at our simulation Excel sheet. So essentially here, the 30% margin of 30%, that means 60% of the value added gets turned into wages. Dividend contribution of 20%, that's essentially the capitalist contribution. Capitalist gets our contribution right now, which again shifts the balance in favor of land taxes and per capita, but yeah, it will only strengthen my argument that proportional is better. And this is, and how this chart is set up is that essentially uh, I have a proportion between subsistence and our industrial economy. So essentially, this one means that 100% of our economy is made up of subsistence, and if I change it to zero, that will mean none of our economy is made up of subsistence. Like, all of our GDP is made up by industries that we built. So yeah, and in the left here we have our tax rates, the land, per capita income, and dividend taxes. Here we have our revenues from different tax rates, and here we have a special column called land bonuses. What is this? It's essentially a bonus to model the fact that since peasants only generate 10% of the demand of how much a normal pot would generate, taxing them with more taxes will only decrease the demand side of the economy by 10%. So essentially, if we take $100 away from a peasant, the demand side of our economy will be only decreased by $10, since there's this 10% demand, right? So the more money we can take out from our peasants, the better, since it's essentially a boost to our overall GDP, which I'm modeling here as, well, essentially a boost to the income revenue, dividend revenue, and investment pool contribution revenue. And we can also see here that since it's just zero for proportional and graduated, well, it's essentially another mechanic that will shift the balance in favor of land taxes and per capita taxes. So now let's go with some Excel magic. I know you can do go seek for this, but I'm just gonna input a number here. It's gonna be easier for me. So as we can see here, when our economy is made up of 89% subsistence, our per capita taxation will be better than land taxation. As we can see here, 87 revenue compared to 86 revenue. And when our subsistence make up only 86% of our economy, proportional will be better than land taxes. So as we can see, per capita is actually only better than both proportional and land for a 3% window. Like, the window for which it's good is so small that it's just not worth it to ever switch into per capita. If you're on land taxes, always get switch into proportional as soon as possible and skip per capita. And if you are on per capita, try to find a way to switch into land switching to proportional as soon as possible. I will also have a video up soon regarding how to switch from proportional to from per capita to proportional. So now we have established in theory that proportional is better than per capita. Why is it in games that we see numbers like this, like Prussia in the beginning? Well, by switching into proportional, you actually lose money. Why is that happening? One, the calculation here is not exactly accurate, and second, which is the most important factor here, is that in the beginning of the game, Prussia has a really badly balanced economy. We can see here we have a lot of shortages and a lot of excesses. For your economy to be healthy, you have to make sure all your intermediate goods, so goods that will be used up by another industry, are at base price. If they are not at base price, your economy will suffer. And since proportional, the reason that proportional is better than per capita is mostly because it collects a dividend tax, and dividends are heavily impacted by any kind of shortages or excesses you have in your economy. So once we eliminate these shortages by, say, building more chemical plants, by building more steel mills, by building more iron mines, by building more forestries, by building more glassworks, and using up the tools, using up the coal, using up the sulfur, using up the lead through different industries. Once we balance out our economy, our proportional will be better. Like this chart is made with the assumption that, we're assuming all prices are base price. Otherwise, our average industry, our average value added per industry will not be 1,000. It will be like 1,500. It will be something like 1,000 or even 500, really low, and that will actually shift the balance in favor of per capita. And that's why for this to work, you have to ensure your economy is balanced and healthy, essentially. So moving on. I'm not gonna go into too much of the detail by comparing graduated and proportional taxation. This one, it's more of a personal preference, I would say. I mean, objectively, graduated would be better. Since, here you can see that graduated isn't really better. However, once we start changing up one of our assumptions, if we increase our margins, graduated becomes better. And since late game your margin will be at like 70% or something, essentially graduated will be collecting a lot more taxes than proportional will in the late game. So yeah, in the late game, graduated will be a bit better. However, it's a tier 3 tech. You need socialism to unlock graduated, which takes a long time, right? And also, I don't really like graduated because it's too dependent on dividends. Like, it's way too dependent on the market functioning at optimal. Like, it's way too dependent on that. Proportional, you still get a good chunk of your income from income taxes, so it's like you're not like your revenue will be a lot more stable than graduated. Yes, graduated in the long term is going to be stronger. However, I just prefer the stability of proportional a lot better. Now you can say, oh, per capita is a lot more stable than proportional. Well, the issue with per capita is that it just doesn't collect a lot of taxes. Like we can see here, if we have a 50-50 share on our subsistence and industrial, graduated, like proportional, will be collecting 30% more taxes than per capita. That's a huge difference. Like when we're talking about graduated versus proportional, the biggest difference will be like 10%. Like this, at medium taxes, the highest difference we can get to will be like 15%. That's not a huge difference. That can be put up to preference. However, when we're talking about 30%, 40%, that's not really preference anymore. You have to switch into proportional. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to industrialize your economy really well. So yeah, that's pretty much that. If you have any questions or comments or opinions, feel free to post them in the comment section. I will reply to them to the best of my abilities. And that's that. Bye bye.